Cheers, everyone. We're back together. I hope you guys have a drink, or what are we drinking? And wait, hang on. Sparky and TK?
I just spilled some of my first. This is my first Bud Light seltzer I've ever had.
Really?
Do you match your drink, though? You're wearing something that matches your drink. Please explain yourselves. What's happening?
Sparky?
Well, we're taking pride in our Bud Light seltzer. I've got the strawberry.
I got the black cherry.
Black cherry. And Robert, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking a Crawford Bock once again from Carbach. Yeah.
And you got the rainbow on the Crawford Bock, so it makes sense.
I do. That's right.
Day to celebrate Pride Week, and that's what Anheuser-Busch is doing. So we want to take our part and celebrate along with them. I'm Mike Reno from Loverboy. I appreciate you guys being with us.
I was gonna say you went on
turn them loose. Turn them loose.
You were drinking, but like, what are you wearing? Is where I really wanted to go with this. I need you guys to really show off the guns here. What do we got?
How did Plumber miss this show?
I spent 3 hours in the farmer's tanning bed today.
You look great.
So we're actually
I
wearing.
feel like I need to roll up my sleeves or something here.
Right? So left out.
Oh, you got a McConaughey.
Julia, if you get if you get thirsty later on, I've got one for you.
There you go. There you go.
Fanny packs really they're great. I'm so glad they're back in stock.
That fanny pack, by the way, is like the perfect size for that Bud Light seltzer, by the way. I should mention that.
It all goes together.
Wait a second, are fanny packs back?
Yeah, they have been for a while.
Are they really?
Oh, yeah.
Julia declared them back when she interviewed McConaughey.
Yeah, 2014. We talked to McConaughey. You guys remember that story I probably told you on the plane. Or you were looking at the monitor like, why are we stalking Matthew McConaughey?
I saw you talking to him on the monitor.
And then, right. And so I ended up getting an interview after talking about getting an interview with him that whole time. But he was wearing a fanny pack, which is how this whole thing started, which I was trying to tell everyone those were cool. Again, I was way ahead of my time because they really are now. Now it's like,
oh, yeah,
you can have a designer fanny pack. But yeah, no, I like what you got rocking. For Pride Month week, and of course it was supposed to be Pride Day at the ballpark, but we're still not there. But guess what? There will be baseball being played at a ballpark very, very soon. Some huge news coming down this week, and I just kind of want to go around and see how everyone's feeling. Robert, I'll start with you.
Well, it's one of those things where, obviously we all know what's going on with the pandemic and everything, and that could always change things and change plans. But I'm just glad that if we're able to play baseball, it's going to be played. It's not going to be disrupted because of the owners and players not agreeing. If it gets disrupted, it's going to be something that's out of everybody's control. So I'm really happy about that. Really excited to get back to work here in another month or so. And just glad that the union and the owners came to an agreement.
Yeah, I think that I'll use a line that I used on our podcast a little earlier today. I think it's not going to be all smooth sailing at this point forward. I think it's going to be a little bit like a Houston street where you're riding along smoothly and all of a sudden you don't see that bump and it comes up and you hit it. You're like, wait, what just happened? Or then you'll hit a dip in the road. You're like, wait, what just happened? We're going to hit a couple of those, like a road in Houston that's been unpaved. And we're not going to have smooth sailing to the start of the season. But the fact that we have a start date, the fact that we should have a schedule in place very shortly. In fact, by the time this airs, we might have one in place. And it'll be exciting to see what's going on. There's still a lot of hurdles to clear, though. I have to think it won't be all smooth from here on out.
And I think it's going to be fun to kind of dive into that 101-page document talking about all the different changes and part of the protocol that the players are going to go through. And one of the things with the extra innings, start with the runner on second base. It's going to be so many things for us to talk about, which is different, which I think is always nice. It's fresh. I know there's a lot of purists out there that don't things like that, like the DH in both leagues and things like that. But I think for the sake of this season, to treat it almost like a laboratory, to experiment a little bit. And plus the fact that you don't want the players out there for 4 hours a day to get extra innings over with a little bit more quickly. I think the strategy is actually going to be pretty fun.
By the way, you mentioned the runner at second base to start extra innings. An interesting wrinkle, and I want to kind of get your thoughts on this, Steve, being a former pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
So, you come in the 10th inning, there's already a runner at second base. So that runner, if that runner scores, it's basically scored as like an unearned run. So it doesn't count against the pitcher's ERA, which when you think about it kind of makes sense because, it's not like it's not the pitcher's fault. Yeah, it's not the pitcher's fault that runner's there. That just happened to be the situation. And talking with some of my friends who've done minor league games, because they've had that rule in place the last couple of years, they talk about how it really speeds up extra inning games and how, you score one run in the top of the 10th, that's usually not going to be enough. You usually are going to have to score multiple runs. You can't play it conservatively. At least that's the way it's played out in the minor league. So I'm excited to see that in action.
That's part of the strategy, though. Do you play for one run or multiple runs?
Right.
And who's on the mound, who's fresh in the other team's bullpen, who do I have coming up, who fields their position well. These relief pitchers have to face 3 batters minimum. Outfield defense, strength of arm. There's a million things to go into place. So a situation, Todd was talking about this earlier, say Pujols is batting second, who actually hits into a lot of ground ball double plays. Do you intentionally walk Ohtani in front of him to pitch to Pujols to try to get that double play and go from there? So there's a lot to it.
You could have an intentional walk to start an inning. If Brantley makes the last out in the bottom half of the ninth, I've got to think Miles Straw comes in defensively so that the guy who made the last out in the bottom of the ninth starts the bottom of the 10th at second base between Brantley and Straw. It's kind of a no-brainer. So there's going to be a lot of strategy moves that are going to happen because of this new rule that have never been in place before.
That's just one line in that 101. Was it 101 pages?
Yeah.
That report. And I did spend a lot of time going over it last night. I want to say that I'm just super excited, but I think I'm with a lot of you guys in that, I look forward to seeing how baseball is going to put this together. I think, of course, staying safe is so crucial. I am so happy for so many people who work around the game, who will to get back to work for the 60-game season. But just I guess I'm very cautious in all this. I feel like there's still a long way to go. Even listening to Dusty Baker, James Click, and even Jim Crane for a little bit today in the presser, it was, that you can tell they've got their hands full and they've got a lot to go over, including that report. Dusty's like, I don't even know what's in there yet. I've got a long way to go as far as feeling good about what we're doing. And then, of course, there's phases to this spring training. There's just so many questions to all of this, and I don't know who even really has the answer at this point. I think we're all in this together as far as figuring it out. Sorry, and you're like, we have so much to talk about in all this, and it's like, but then again, we only have 60 games to get, hopefully we get all 60 games. That's gonna feel really weird, right? I mean, we're all so used to having time and so many games throughout a season to get through some of these conversations and topics and things that we want to do. This is going to feel like a little bit of a sprint for us too, right? Don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think, and then also too, the fact, only playing within your division and then interleague plays against the opposite division. So the Astros are just going to see the AL West and the National League West. So that obviously changes things. And so you won't get to see the rest of the American League, which I know that's something that all of us kind of look forward to, going to these different cities and seeing all these different American League teams. And that's going to be different. It's going to feel different also too. Obviously the travel situation is going to be a lot different. We're going to be doing road games from Houston as opposed to traveling with the team with everything that's going on. So yeah, it's going to be, I think it's safe to say it's going to be unlike any baseball season any of us have experienced or that anybody really has experienced, whether you're a fan, a player, a coach, or a manager.
What are the Astros really good at? And I think they're really good at taking advantage of what's presented. And I think this landscape is so different from whatever has been presented. And right now I'm thinking about, and Mr. Crane even mentioned this earlier in his press conference, is he wants to be aggressive as far as free agents go. Why not start early? there's a lot of teams that have lost a lot of money, presumably so far early on in this season, that they could probably use a little break as far as their finances go. So be aggressive, kind of target the teams that you think that might have a player or two available ahead of the free agent market coming out.
Sparky, where'd you get that shirt?
I got it at the team store, Todd. Thanks for asking.
You got a little chilly?
It's a fishing shirt. It's an Astros fishing shirt.
I got one.
By Columbia. You did?
Yeah, I got to put it on now. I didn't know.
I think Robert's got one on too.
Yeah, this is a different one. I've got a pocket here, so I can put all my lures in it. Comes in handy when I'm sitting in my apartment, but it's a great looking shirt.
These are great.
Go.
They're all different. They're all fishing shirts that you guys have.
Yeah.
Y'all look great. A little rainbow
There's a big
action.
variety.
And apparently, the Astros sell more fishing shirts than any other team in Major League Baseball.
Ooh.
There you
Makes
go.
sense.
Little known fact.
Yeah.
I also know.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
With
Well, I was going to
regards to
say
the
they also
shorter
have
season-
Hawaiian shirts.
Oh, the Larry Durker shirts.
Yes.
We had Dirk on a recent podcast, and he said the reason he got into Hawaiian shirts was the team was struggling. And he brought it up during a broadcast with Brownie. Like, you know what this team needs? And Brownie said, yeah, we need some hitting. Larry said, no, this team needs more Hawaiian shirts because have you ever seen a person? He said, have you ever seen a person with a Hawaiian shirt in a bad mood?
There you
So
go.
that's how he started it.
That's what everybody talks about, that this team is having fun, right? And that's when things are going well. So to kind of get ahead of that, Larry Durker, I think, was almost ingenious. Terry Collins was my manager with the Angels. He took that from Durker and did the same thing, bought everybody on our team a Hawaiian shirt there too.
No way. That's awesome.
Yep.
Ironic
Very
because
calm.
Durker took over for Collins.
That's
I
right.
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
with the
don't
shorter
have a
season,
fishing
I
shirt.
think that if you get up to a quick, you don't have a fishing shirt. You don't have a seltzer, and you're not allowed to have a seltzer. You don't
Not
have
allowed
a
to have
headband.
seltzer. But can I talk about my cool shirt real
Yes.
quick? I have a cool ladies shirt, and I have a cool little tumbler that's keeping my water. Yes, it's water, everyone. Water very, very cold. And I'm drinking water, not a seltzer. If you totally missed the news, then, here's a reminder.
There you
Very
go.
nice.
How cute this is for the baby that's coming. And
That looks like Terry Poole.
Your baby's going to be batting lead.
so cute.
Is that the
Oh,
only
yes.
baby-related gear you got, or did you buy the whole store out?
No, not yet. I thought about putting a lot of it on my baby registry. You could just add stuff from all over. But this is the most adorable thing ever, and I almost cried when I saw it. So there's actually other stuff too for babies, and I'm about to, you said, put it all on my registry. Okay, I just wanted to show this off to everyone. If you've got a baby or someone that is having a baby soon, perfect gift. There you go.
I am looking forward to seeing a picture of your baby, Julia, in that onesie at some point.
I know. I'm thinking spring training next year.
Yes.
Baby will be about this big. So
maybe. You'd be surprised.
Oh my goodness. I'm guessing.
Something tells me you're going to have a lot of Astro stuff sent your way.
I hope so. I hope so. It'd be cute. Very, very, very cute. Okay, TK, sorry. What were you?
No, well, anyway, so I was just, your question was about the short season. Obviously, if you get off to like a 5-12 start, you're in serious trouble. That's 17 out of 60 games. Same thing if you flip it like what the Mariners did last year and you start out 13-2, all of a sudden you're counting down a magic number by the third week of the season. So it's going to be bizarre. They're going to try and limit the time you're at the stadium, not just players, but all the people that are involved, including us if we go to home games. Truth be told, of all of us, Robert and Julie are usually the earliest ones to the ballpark. I don't think we're going to have our broadcast room where we can hang out in the past. I think they're going to tell us to get there as late as possible so we don't interact with – they don't want people around for rain delays. They don't want extra innings to go very long. There's going to be suspended games instead of rain delays. Like everything they're doing is to condense the amount of time people go into and out of the ballpark.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And also a big reason why we get to the ballpark when we do, whether it's, 2, 3 o'clock for a 7 o'clock game, a lot of that is because we're in the clubhouse, we're on the field for batting practice, but we, as broadcasters won't get to do that, this year because of all of the standards and limiting people who are on the field and in the clubhouse. So yeah, that changes things for us. And yeah, I mean, I guess we get to sleep in a little bit more, so I guess that's good. But yeah, it's going to be different. But I'm excited about it. This is something I think we'll be talking about for the rest of our lives, just going through this season. And obviously, we understand why it's happening. We understand that there are reasons a lot bigger than baseball for why these standards are in place, and we certainly get that. But yeah, looking forward to bringing Astros baseball to everybody.
Oh, you know what I realized last night, TK, and you guys too. I'm not sure. There's a lot that's unknown as far as the broadcast is going to go. But for right now, it sounds like we are going to be broadcasting road games from here in Houston, and the Astros playing, of course, the AL and then the NL West. That's a lot of late first.
So, I wonder if they're going to move some of those game times up, especially if a lot of the games are played without fans. Because, I mean, if games are played without fans, what's the point of starting a game, say, in Anaheim at 7 o'clock Pacific time, which would be 9 o'clock Central time? I mean, why don't you move that up an hour or two and get people out of there quicker also? So I wonder we'll see. I mean, we don't know the schedule yet.
I think they'll do that, though. I think they'll do that.
I think it makes a lot of sense. And so that'll be obviously a relief for a lot of Astros fans. It's kind of weird because the Astros are in a weird spot. The reason teams are only playing their division and then in interleague, the opposite division in the other league, is to reduce travel. But there's so much travel just in the AL West, especially when you're in Houston, or, the Texas Rangers are in a similar situation. So there's still quite a bit of travel. But yeah, I certainly hope, and it certainly sounds like just some of the things that we've heard, nothing official yet, but some of the things we've heard, maybe they'll move some of those game times up on the West Coast.
Yeah. Right. And especially 60 games in 66 days or so is what they're saying. I mean, the travel's hard enough with what, we know something about coming from the West Coast. How many 5 a.m.s have we seen landing in Houston? And so I can't imagine that.
Yeah, every getaway day should be a day game.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? I love those night getaway games. Those are just awesome.
So it's going to be interesting with the roster too, right? So they're going to be able to have 30 players to begin the season. I think it's 15 days later, they cut it by 2 down to 28, and then another 15 days later down to 26. And that's where the roster will stay till the end. So to keep extra players, you got to think that 3 of those 4 extra ones at the beginning anyway have to be pitchers, don't they?
Yeah, and there's not going to be the rules, because remember, one of the rules that was supposed to go in place this year in Major League Baseball was with the 26-man roster, which was new, was limiting how many pitchers you could have. But apparently that's not going to be the case this year, given the circumstances. So yeah, I would think you would load up on some pitching, especially early in the year.
Sparky, the other rule that I thought was interesting, and we touched upon it earlier, pitchers, they pretty much have to bring their own stuff out to the mound now, right?
Yeah.
Rosin
so the funny
bag?
part about that, so they bring their own rosin bag, and they bring this wet cloth, I guess, that they keep in their back pocket. So that's okay. But how many times are we going to see during the course of a season where a pitcher forgets to take his rosin bag back to the dugout with him? It's going to happen every inning for the first 2 weeks, right?
Because that's the other thing.
Remember that.
That's the other thing. Players same thing with hitters. You go to the on-deck circle, you got to bring your own donut. You got to bring your own pine tar rag, because that's usually a communal thing. It's shared amongst all the hitters. And then when you make the last out of the inning, there's no oh, my teammate's going to bring my glove out to me. You have to go back to the dugout and get your glove and your hat and go out to the field. So that's going to take some getting used to for guys. Some guys are going to forget, like you said, Steve, with the rosin bag and all that. I think you're going to see that as well.
There's nothing like for a pitcher who's had a bad inning, who is just livid, steaming anyway, to have to go back to the middle of the field, almost with his tail between his legs to go get what he forgot. He wants to throw it into center field.
Chris Spire is the newest member of the Astros coaching staff. So I think it's going to be his role. If Verlander gives up a cheap flip shot 2-out home run into the Crawford boxes, and JV is steaming coming off the mound and he's forgotten to bring the rosin bag with him, Spire's going to have to be the one who's designated to say, forgot your rosin bag.
Or you designate, maybe you give rubber gloves to some bat boy to go out there and get it, right?
Yeah. It's almost like being a parent. Like, oh, hey, you forgot something? You got to go back and get that. Let's go.
But a lot of they're going to forget a lot of stuff, but a lot of the stuff that these guys do is almost involuntary. It's like breathing, the way that they spit, even it's just part of their routine, or lick their hands to that wet rag. Like in the beginning, it'll be
chewing, dipping, it'll be all that stuff.
That's got to be hard. My brain would be tired having to think of things like that, because they do them so often over the course of a 3.5-hour game.
I think, and like a lot of people know, a lot of these rules are put in place to make people think about it. Whether or not they're going to follow those rules, at least if you're thinking about it, you'll be conscious and maybe curtail it to a degree. But like we've seen in the Korean baseball organization, you're still seeing guys high five despite those regulations. But if you get people thinking about it, I think is the main thing right now.
And like Dusty Baker even talked about how, he's known for having the toothpick in his mouth. That's kind of been his trademark. And, he talked about, if he's wearing a mask, is he still going to have that toothpick? Yeah. I mean, it's just, just things like that you never had to think about before if you're Dusty Baker or anybody else on the field. But these are just things that you have to think about a little bit more now, given everything that's going on.
You know what I took away from Dusty talking to everyone this morning? He's a jolly guy in general, very smiley, very happy to be around. But there was just like an extra pep to him, even across a Zoom call, that he was actually going to get his chance to manage the Astros. I think he was really excited about it when he got the job, genuinely just ready to get back to work and get back to managing, and then knowing he had a really good team. And so now he's just been sitting on it and waiting. And it sounds like he's kept up a lot of this communication between everyone. So I just felt that from him today. Like he even talked about his son coming in and asking him, and he's like, of course. And there's a lot to be concerned about. I mean, he's about to get on a plane and head to Houston. There's a lot that's going on with him, and just need to keep him safe as everyone else. But man, you could just tell there was just a little extra to Dusty today when he was talking about it. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
Yeah, I noticed. And I think for Dusty and any coach or manager who is towards the end of their career, in Dusty's case, he thought he was already retired from the game of baseball. Then he got this reprieve, and he was already in spring training, getting the gears going, and then he had to take another step back. So he was probably as anxious as anybody to get going. But anybody who is later in their career, whether you're a player, coach, or manager, you're looking at your time collapsing, and without the season being played, you're ticking off months that you wish you could be out there. So I'm sure Dusty and the guys that are towards the end of their careers, whether it's playing, coaching, or managing, are appreciating it more than anybody.
When you're good too. I think when you're good, you're anxious to get out there and prove it. And I think this team probably has the biggest chip on their shoulders, probably in the major leagues, and maybe to the extent that they've ever had it. We always look at Alex Bregman and think he plays with a chip on his shoulder, but I think a lot of the players are going to resemble and Alex Bregman out there this year, because I think they have a lot to play for.
What is Lance McCullers going to be like?
Can't wait. I cannot wait. I mean, he's going to be so fun to watch.
He's got to be loaded for bear. I mean, he's been ready for months. I mean, even more so than these other guys, since he didn't pitch at all last year after having Tommy John surgery. So yeah, here's another thing I'm kind of interested in. We're talking about some of the differences with a 60-game season. So if you make every turn of rotation every 5 days or so, that's 12 starts. That's a fraction of, that's about a third for a lot of guys, if what they're anticipating if they pitch a full season. So let's say I don't know, maybe this doesn't apply as much to Lance McCullers since he's coming off injury, but let's say you're, Justin Verlander. Do you let it go a little bit more? Because hey, 12 regular season starts. And even if you go all the way to the World Series, it's still going to be a lot fewer starts than you would have in a normal year. So do you let it go a little bit more? Are you a little bit more aggressive? Do you dial it up a little bit more if you for velocity and things like that, because just 12 regular season starts? I wonder how that's going to play out as well.
Yeah, the other angle with that, Robert, I'm curious too, is relievers. There's a lot of guys who have never pitched fewer than 50 games in their career. And even if you lead the league in games pitched, you got to think that's going to be right around 30 to 35. You're not going to pitch 40 out of 60 games. So are those guys going to now be 2-inning guys at a time? There's all kinds of questions nobody knows the answers to, but those guys are going to
Could see some minuscule reliever ERAs pitching in 30 to 35 games.
I saw today that it's only going to take 186 plate appearances to qualify for the batting title. Can you imagine that? There's a real possibility that somebody could hit 400 this year. You know, you think about Altuve, Tim Anderson. There's a lot of guys that I think are capable.
Wouldn't Presley have been around 0 for the year if we counted only the first 30?
Yeah, you're right.
That's right.
You're
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah, that's right.
I think Cody Bellinger may have hit 400 the first 186 plate appearances last year. He was real close to that.
He came close. He hit like 3, because I was reading about this the other day. He hit like 376. I guess nobody has hit 400. And okay, so I don't know about plate appearances, but in terms of 60 games, first 60 team games of a season, Chipper Jones was the last guy to be hitting 400 over his first 60 team games. And that was like, I got to look at it again. It was like 04, 05. Yeah. But in the last 10 years, Cody Bellinger came closest, hitting 376. I believe that was last year, over his first 60 games.
And one thing I can speak to is, as far as this shortened spring training, is I was involved the last time that this happened in 1995. We had a 2.5-week spring training leading up to that season. We carried 2 extra pitchers to begin the season for the first 2.5 weeks, but that wasn't enough. And that's the reason why I wanted to say that when you're talking about Verlander extending himself. I think when you really go to that extra gear and you start competing, no matter how many times you've thrown bullpens and built things up, it's not the same as pitching in competition. And I think surely Verlander knows that, but I think it's going to be up to the staff and a lot of people to really dial some of these guys back their first 2 or 3 outings when they start competing. Because once you get an opposing player hitting against you, it really takes things to another level. And I'm talking about hamstrings, obliques, all of those things come into play at a different level.
So how do you do that, Sparky? I mean, and for you guys, what do you think happens for the pitchers? You know, we kind of know what their routine is when they show up and, you know, as far as bullpens, but is it almost going to be like accelerated, like live, they're pitching in live BPs and this, I mean, you just do it as fast as you can. I mean, how do you think that that's going to happen to get them so ready without exhibition games? It sounds like there's a couple, but
they should be miles ahead of where they were when they came to spring training the first time. So this is spring training 2. They should probably be about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of where they would normally show up to a spring training. So I think within the first couple of days, you'll be able to throw live batting practice and then go out there if you're a starting pitcher, go out there for a 2-inning stint, maybe a 4-inning stint, and get it up to 6 by your 4th outing. But then you got to dial them back at some point, because once you face opposing players, it takes it even to another level. So I think the coaching staff, the pitching staff, they have to take it out of some of those guys' hands, especially somebody like McCullers, who's a maximum effort type pitcher.
It's true. Didn't they say there was going to be a chance for a couple of exhibition games if it was bold, depending on where they're located? That would be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think going back to something you said earlier with the number of questions, there are definitely more questions than answers right now. We don't know what the scenario, if they have a scenario for a major league team that happened to the Phillies down at Clearwater, their spring training site, where a combination of 11 players and staff members have tested positive. What does that mean to a major league team? Does that mean that everybody on the A squad or the varsity squad has to then leave, and then everybody on the B squad or minor league squad comes in to fill in? Because with 11 people infected, you would think everybody in the clubhouse could be impacted. So there's so many questions right now. What if Martin Maldonado has brought up a question? Other guys have asked the same thing. But if you get, tested positive on the road, you can't travel with the team at that point. What happens? You just stay there and bubble up in a hotel?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting during the regular season because, let's face it, there are going to be guys who are going to test positive during the regular season for COVID. It's inevitable. How is that handled? What does that look like? And, our teams, especially since it's only a 60-game season, you lose a guy for, say, 10 games, that's much more significant over 60 games as opposed to losing a guy for 10 out of 162. And if it's because of COVID, that changes things quite a bit. So, again, like you guys said, there are just so many unknowns, and, the impact of COVID-19 is still going to be felt during the season. I don't think we even really know, and nobody really knows how much of an impact it's going to be and how much it could affect how some of these teams do, especially with only a 60-game season.
But sometimes we realize that the players probably feel like a lot of times their life is in a bubble. And to an extent, we feel like the same thing. I mean, we're doing the same thing and we're kind of isolated or insulated really to an extent. But when it gets down to it, the situation that we're in now is very much like everybody else. We're not in this bubble because we're so reliant on the people who are really making a huge difference right now. And that's Jeremiah Randall, the Astros head athletic trainer. That's his staff. That's the Astros doctors. That's the medical providers who are going to really, if this thing is pulled off, they're going to be the heroes in this, just like it is in the outside world, right?
Absolutely.
The clubhouse, anyone that's in that clubhouse that's just constantly going to be keeping it clean. I mean, it's in the report, what stood out was the amount of things that these guys are going to have to remember in their living space. Usually this clubhouse to them is like a second home, and it's like they can't sit at the same dining table. You know, the shower situation's different. Their lockers aren't close anymore. And then, you know, coming in and out of doors, who's going to be following right behind. And so I think about all the people that are going to be working behind the scenes to make this possible. Like you said, Sparky, these are some heroes.
I'll tell you somebody else. I mean, we've been on enough conference calls to realize what they're doing at Minute Maid Park is unbelievable. Marcel Braithwaite, what they've been able to put together to make it the facility as safe as possible. I can't believe some of the things they're thinking about. And when they say them, I said, yeah, that makes sense. But how are they able to take care of so many things? And man, hats off to these people. They're really doing a great job. And,
absolutely.
You know, it's going to be a safer place than going to the grocery store. I guarantee that.
Yeah, I mean, I would think, just based on where we are now, and things can change on a daily basis, but I would think if they are going to allow fans, we've been one of the organizations that has asked questions about when fans can come in to a stadium, and I hope that happens at some point. I don't know if it will or not, but I hope it does. We've got to get the numbers in the right direction, and right now they're not in the best direction. But hopefully, by the time baseball starts, they will be better.
Well, the good news is we're talking about it.
Yeah,
we're talking about something that's in the future. You know, we're not so unsure like we were before. There's a chance that we get out there and get to do our jobs that we love. It's going to be a little different this year, but more than anything, I can't wait to watch this very talented baseball team go out there and compete again. I love them.
Speaking of jobs being different, I want to ask Julia, because she's the moderator and never gets asked questions very much. How do you see your role this year? Have you figured it out yet?
No, but it's something being talked about. You know, I'm actually speaking with a lot of reporters around the country that have similar jobs, my counterparts, and I think they're trying to come up with ideas. You know, it sounds like in the report as well, there's tiers to this whole thing of who gets to be where and who gets to get close enough to these players, and obviously they're going to keep a lot of us that aren't non-essential. You know, I'm obviously not a trainer, but a broadcaster, but there are things that we can do from afar, which is, you know, where our crew comes in, and all the people that are working for us to put on a great show and to put on an Astros game. There's just so many people that are hard at work right as we speak, trying to figure out how we're going to do this. But there is the potential of doing these interviews maybe via headset. We don't have to be that close. We can make this happen, but still get the soundbite, if you will, get that reaction from the player after a walk-off or a big game, and still have that for the viewers. It's so important, and that's what fans love to see, especially after big wins. So there's a way. We're still talking through a lot of it, but definitely going to change. I'm not going to be sitting down in my usual spot, which, you know, that I'd love that spot, but that's just where we are right now. And maybe sometime in the future they'll have photographers down there again and reporters, but that's not going to be allowed this time around, as they are keeping everyone away from the playing field. And I'm certainly too close to the field where my seat was, dangerously close, if you will. I guess I don't have to worry about foul balls as much since there's a positive. And, we're making the best of it. And I just hope everyone continues to be safe. I was rooting for baseball to return just like everyone else. I mean, I love this job and I love the Astros play every night. But it almost feels like everything has shifted to just kind of rooting for everyone's safety and rooting that everyone continues to put on a game, but doing it the right way in the safest way possible, so that we can all feel good about this at the end of the season, and hopefully they're all the way to the end of the World Series. That would be nice, right? Let's just go to one of those again.
You know what I thought about when I just thought about something when you said you're not going to be in your position. I was thinking always about how much you're going to miss the interaction with the players on a daily basis, and do such a great job with that. You're going to miss the interaction with the mascots a lot.
No. Orbit can't even be down there. Orbit's not even allowed on the field. Come on.
This year,
can Orbit even catch anything? I mean,
with
or
you
do
being
aliens
pregnant and all the mascots not able to have fun with that? Oh gosh.
I know, the photo ops, man.
I hope you get to interview Orbit a lot.
He's a great interview. No, but yeah, I read that in there that mascots couldn't even be. They're very restricted on what they can be doing as well. It's incredible. The report really is super detailed, and it probably doesn't cover everything. I mean, it's just there's so much to be thought about, but they have gone through and found a lot and thought through a lot, I think. And who knows how much will change as this goes on. But the first things first, right? They just got to get through phase 1 of spring training and figure out how to get these guys in the building and get them tested in a timely manner. It sounded like that's going to take a long time. For these guys, if they're going to be tested as often as they want them to be. It's going to be some long days, and they may not all be at the ballpark at the same time. How about that? I mean, you think about trying to get their work in and doing these things. Sounds like it's going to be a little bit of a cycle, or just guys kind of running through and having a certain time that they have to be there. That's crazy to me. You think about the bonding and all that happens, and I know they did get a little bit of that. But all these guys want to do is be in the same room again, right? And just and cut up and be themselves. That sounds like it's going to take some time.
Yeah, I'm going to miss our broadcaster room. I don't think we're going to be able to congregate there anymore. I'm going to miss a lot of things this year. This is just going to be a bizarre year. To piggyback on something Sparky said earlier, I think there's going to be a lot of player movement. I really do, because there's going to be teams that are going to want to unload. It's going to be a negative cash flow season for everybody in the major leagues. And there's going to be some teams that are hurting more than others. Are going to want to unload, and teams are going to try and take advantage of that if they can. I think you're going to see a lot of player movement. And then the whole protocol when a guy comes to a new team with the COVID and all that, we're in for an interesting 2020, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's already interesting and this is a part that, a lot of fans don't always realize or see when a player gets traded. It's not like that player is the only one who's moving. Their family a lot of times is moving as well. How does that look now? I think it's safe to say that with everything going on, you're not going to see families traveling with their spouses who are players as much as we saw in the past. But it's still going to be a really unique situation. You still have a lot of people's lives who are uprooted when a trade happens, and not just the player himself, their family as well. And how does that look? How does that go? And, I thought you brought up a good point, Julia. You talk about a 101-page manual about, protocol for the upcoming season, but there's still so much that we can't possibly anticipate, that we just can't possibly know. That 101 pages probably isn't nearly enough, but there's just so much that you just can't cover and that you just won't know until it actually happens.
Okay, I got something for you, Julia. Ready?
Okay.
This is for Todd and Robert, play-by-play men, and it's free. You don't have to pay for this. You don't have to solicit advice. It's free. And I've got you some pandemic home run calls. You ready?
No, but go ahead.
That ball went viral. He hit that one to Quarantine Bayou. He really flattened that curve. Now that's social distance. You like that one?
That's pretty good.
Ouchie, Fauci, he spanked that one.
Oh my God.
That's my favorite.
Oh my God.
Have you ever vaccine a throw like that? Sanitize this.
You said that those are free?
Those are free. Those are free.
You get what you pay for, I feel like.
Oh my gosh.
Fauci. You can't pick
Fauci.
Fauci.
Oh.
Wow.
If that doesn't make you miss baseball and get real excited
You're welcome.
to watch you guys go.
I am speechless. I am without speech.
You're welcome.
Hey, I know for those who, we don't know if fans are going to be allowed in the ballpark to sit. Obviously, we've said, over and over, there's a lot of unknown, but you can get to the ballpark. Eaton store's open. We're all rocking our gear. We've got our fishermen here. You guys gonna rip some lips or what? And that's not for sale. Don't look at his tank top, but it is a cool tank.
Hey, my first Bud Light seltzer ever. Thumbs up. I like the black cherry.
Fauci.
Good. Also, if you want to
I'm
take a
trying to make that a
tour,
thing,
you're doing
Sparky.
tours. You should be a tour guide, Sparky. Why don't they have you doing the tours for people? Because you can get a tour right now.
I've never seen anything like that.
Tour guide.
Yeah, my
Sparky
daughter
gave
was a
it
tour
would
guide.
end up a disaster.
Hey, by the way, on the tours, they've got a 9:30 p.m. tour on Saturday nights. It's called the Ghost Tour, and you've never vaccinated anything like it.
Ouchie,
Okay.
Fauci.
Thank you.
It's time to wrap this up. Play ball, everyone. Let's play.
Do you have the baby yet?